it's Michaela, and today I'm going to be talking about the MBTI types and studying. So essentially, which study style works best for you based on your personality. I finally compiled all of the data from the survey I put out a couple days ago. There were over 600 results, and I poured through each one individually because it wouldn't let me filter based on MBTI type, which is very annoying. Where is it? Here's all my data. Yes, very professional, as you can see with my little check marks and dashes. Very technological, very advanced, but it worked. And anyway, now I have the results, and actually there's going to be a part 2 to this video because I had in the survey questions for study habits and learning styles. This video is going to be long enough with the study habits, so basically it's going to be a sequel to this. If you want to be notified when the second part comes out about learning styles, then you should subscribe to my channel, click the red button right below the video. But if I'm also being perfectly honest here, I also spent a lot of time on this and I really want to feel validated about it. So subscribe to my channel, but only if you want to, whatever. Okay, anyway, the important stuff now. So first I have a few disclaimers. Foremost, the data isn't as comprehensive for some types as it is for others. I had a lot of survey results from intuitive types, but none at all from sensors. So if the data is not quite as accurate for the sensors, that is why. I just didn't get nearly enough results. Sometimes there was a vast amount of support for an answer, and sometimes there's no correlation. I'm not going to speak about a correlation that isn't there. I'm only talking about the stuff that actually appeared in the data. I'm talking about the trends that I saw. Also, keep in mind, I'm no expert on MBTI. I've only read a few books on it, and I've been kind of just researching it since 7th grade. But by no means am I a college graduate in MBTIology. For each MBTI type, as I go through the patterns that I found in the data, I'll try to provide a psychological explanation if I can. Sometimes I don't. But I talk about the cognitive functions. If you don't know what they are, I strongly would encourage you to go research them so that you know what I'm talking about. But also this video will still make a lot of sense even if you don't know what the cognitive functions are. I'll still tell you what studying style is going to work best for you based on your type. So as long as you know your MBTI type, you're good to go. Here are the pie charts of summarizing data for all 16 types. I didn't have a pie chart for each type for each question because that would have been dozens and dozens of pie charts. But if you want to compare your study style compared to the general proportion or general preference amongst all the types, you can refer back to these. And also, this is what all the questions were if you forgot what the questions had been. Also, side note, I know it says that there's 528 responses on these, but I had a SurveyMonkey poll up at first, but that didn't work out for me, so I switched to Google Forms. So I did have over 600 total, but it looks like less right here. That being said, here were the trends for each type, and I included the timestamps in the caption, so if you want to just skip ahead to your type, click on the time next to your type below. If you're an ISFJ, you work best at nighttime and with visual study tools. Your memory likely performs better if you use diagrams and videos to memorize material, because you tend to retain that which you can see, rather than just writing notes or reading a textbook. This is because of your dominant function, which cooperates with anything the 5 senses can pick up on and internalize. Likewise, you'll be most productive in a quiet or silent environment. Stimulation isn't likely to inspire you, rather it's going to distract you by putting your brain on a tangent that has nothing to do with your work at hand. Finally, you work best in 20 to 40 minute intervals, taking a break about every half an hour. While there's no specific time of day that ESFJs said they were most productive, the first half of the day was certainly favored over the second half. Though they're usually outgoing, a vibrant study place is not the best for ESFJs. Their extraverted feeling function is very attuned to the conversations of other people, which in turn means stimulation is apt to distract them. In addition, most ESFJs answered that they prefer a study duration that is somewhere in the middle of 20 minutes to an hour. Finally, ESFJs have a preference for flashcards as a study tool. This personality type often enjoys organization to a certain degree, so likewise, I think that the convenience and neatness of flashcards is appealing. ISFPs prefer to rewrite and highlight, and they say that they are most productive in the second half of the day. Very sparingly did they say that they are most productive in the first half of the day. By far, ISFPs prefer a quiet environment with little stimulation. Their dominant introverted feeling likely prevents them from working well in a vibrant environment, and conversely, their auxiliary sensing function doesn't take well to a mute environment. Lastly, ISFPs had an overwhelming fondness for shorter studying sessions. While the ESFP had no preference for a time of day to study, they did indicate that a stimulating environment is preferable to a silent one. I believe that this is due to the extroverted sensing function. ESFPs thrive with external contact and things that they can grasp with their 5 senses. A silent environment would therefore be oppressive to them. They also expressed a preference for rewriting and highlighting notes when studying, and shorter study periods over longer ones. ISTJs collectively are more productive in the morning and daytime. They're also vehement in their choice of silent or quiet study environments, with not a single person opting for a vibrant environment. The dominant introverted sensing function internalizes sensory details it picks up. Therefore, a stimulating environment would be very distracting to an ISTJ. There's also a preference for looking at visuals and diagrams. The mere addition of the sense of sight to studying will supplement the ISTJ because of their dominant function. Lastly, there is no trend in length of time for studying, which suggests that they are more versatile in how durations of focusing affect their productivity. ESTJs prefer to either get things done in the morning or as the day draws to an end. Likely it's because of their dominant extroverted thinking, which suggests that their day is often filled with routines or plans or some designated task they scheduled earlier. Thus, perhaps studying is best saved for their downtime at either ends of the day. They also unanimously elected a quiet environment with little stimulation. While ESTJs had no trend in study tools, they did have a tendency to prefer longer periods of study without breaks. Again, I would attribute this to their dominant function, which is a very logical function and would thus be appetized by productivity without frequent breaks, which they might view as only a detour to their goals. ISTPs were divided between a silent and quiet environment. However, I would suggest a silent one only because their dominant function is introverted sensing, and internalizing their observant nature would be more difficult in a vibrant environment than a silent one. They prefer to study by looking at visuals and diagrams because the inclusion of the sense of sight to their studying likely corroborates their auxiliary function. They also lean towards shorter studying sessions over longer ones and have more productivity at nighttime. While the ESTP demonstrated no preference amongst times of day to study, they did exhibit an attraction towards vibrant study environments. Just like their fellow extroverted sensing user, the ESFP, this dominant function does best when stimulated because it processes based on exposure to external clues that are picked up by the senses. They also say that flashcards best aid their memory and function best in short bursts of energy. Just like the ESTJ, who they share the dominant function of extroverted thinking with, the ENTJ prefers to study either in the morning or at night, but not in the middle of the day when they're busy and preoccupied. They like quiet environments the most, and they enjoy reading as a study tool. Lastly, they enjoy longer periods of study in which their strategic mind can delve completely into what they're focusing on. By far, the ENTPs are night owls. Very few are productive in the morning. Though their preference was for a quiet environment, it was close with vibrant, suggesting that they do enjoy stimulation. This is likely because stimulation triggers their extroverted intuition, which is fundamentally their dominant process of brainstorming with the accompaniment of their external environment. Similarly, their preferred study aid is quizzing with friends, just like the ENFP, whom they share their dominant function with. The interaction with other people energizes their constantly active minds and gives their extroverted intuition something to dwell upon. Finally, they strongly indicated that they study best in shorter periods. Once again, this is due to their ever-active minds. They need changes of scenery rather than monotony in order for them to be productive. ENFJs tend to be most productive in the evenings. They like to have a quiet environment to study in, with little stimulation. Though they are very extroverted people, their dominant function would serve them poorly if they're studying with a group of people, because they'd likely become too distracted. Their favored study method is to rewrite and highlight. Possibly this is due to their auxiliary introverted intuition, which enjoys identifying patterns amongst data, something that is easier to see and do when highlighting and choosing which concepts to reiterate on a single paper. Finally, they enjoy studying for periods of 20 to 40 minutes. ENFPs tied for a preference with morning and night for studying. As social butterflies who are constantly seeking their next source of entertainment, they possibly enjoy saving their productivity for these opposite ends of the day. They mostly prefer a quiet environment, with a fair few saying that they like a vibrant environment. However, most striking is their partiality towards studying by quizzing with friends. ENTPs, who they share their dominant function with, also had this preference. I think that the act of quizzing with friends allows them to bounce ideas off one another, thereby bolstering their extroverted intuition and providing a steady stream of input for their active, brainstorming minds. Lastly, they thrive when studying for 20 to 40 minutes at a time. INTJs most enjoy studying at night, with almost no one choosing the middle of the day as their preference. As an INTJ myself, I can vouch for the accuracy of this next trend. INTJs prefer silent environments to study. They internalize all of their thought processes with their dominant function of introverted intuition, and especially with their inferior function of extroverted sensing. Any external stimulation would only be a distraction. By far, they prefer rewriting and highlighting notes. Again, probably so that they can make connections between topics and emphasize concepts on one page. This is akin to the INFJ, who they share a dominant function with, since both like being able to visualize relationships between ideas. They also do best with long durations of studying, mostly 40 minutes to an hour and even more. This is likely due to their auxiliary extroverted thinking. INTPs are very private people, and this is possibly why they like to study at night. It leaves them to their own devices and mind. They most enjoy quiet environments with little stimulation. They also had a lack of a trend for a study tool. However, this might make sense.
INTPs process on internal logic, with their dominant function of introverted thinking, and likely function based on their own specific ideas and preferences, rather than a generic inclination. Finally, they had a definitive majority of votes for shorter study periods, as their auxiliary extroverted sensing requires stimulation and is inhibited by long periods of inactivity. By far, INFPs enjoy nighttime studying over any other time of the day. They also vastly enjoy quiet environments the most. Perhaps their attuned nature to their own beliefs and principles is the cause of this. The INFP likes to have reflective spaces, but not without stimulation, due to their auxiliary extroverted sensing. They need stimulation to, in turn, trigger their internal reflections and philosophies. They favor rewriting and highlighting notes, and also like study sessions that last 20 to 40 minutes. Again, courtesy of their necessity for time to think, but also a thirst for stimulation. INFJs had absolutely no correlation at all with time of day for studying. They are very individual people, and this manifests in their daily routine. There is simply no direction at all in which they tend to lean. However, they do demonstrate quite passionately their unanimous support for a quiet environment. They like the study tool of rewriting and highlighting notes the most, just like the INTJ, who they share a dominant function with. Both like the tool of looking at a singular page of notes and making connections between all of the concepts, because it appeals to their dominant introverted intuition. Finally, they work best in periods of 20 to 40 minutes.
I'm listing the key takeaways from each cognitive function in the caption below if you also want to check those out. And once again, don't forget to subscribe if you want to watch the next video for which learning style is going to work best for your type. Also, like the video if you want. It would make my day. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting my video. I hope that this enlightened you somehow. I hope that it's going to help you next time you study. Have a fantastic rest of your week.